So last year, right after the draft, I made a video entitled The 7 Worst Drafts of the 2022 NFL Draft, in my opinion. I think I might have phrased it a little better than I just said it right now, but regardless, that was the video I made. So I figured, hey, could be fun to look back now on that list of the drafts I said were the worst and see, was I right at the time or was I wrong? Do some of these drafts actually look pretty good? In hindsight, there's both examples on it, so let's just get into it. First up, got to explain what the chart that you're seeing right over here is, but this is the Dallas Cowboys draft, and what you see is the column all the way to the left, that's when these players were actually selected. The number right next to their names, that is where they were on the consensus big board at the time they were drafted, and then obviously at the right is their name, and, I had the Cowboys on here because I didn't love the Tyler Smith draft at the time. Hey, they proved me wrong. Tyler Smith was awesome. So they actually ended up, I thought it was a reach at 24. Ended up being a steal at 24. He was really good. So, it's hard to really, when you have one main criticism about a draft and that criticism actually ends up being a positive. Clearly, this was one I was wrong about. I like Jake Ferguson a lot too, what he was able to do. And, plenty of other players who could potentially, be solid. But the Tyler Smith one is the one why I'm going to say this was a loss for me right off the bat. Next up, Trayvon Walker, which I actually defended some of these moves. I pretty much just hated one of these picks, which was the Trayvon Walker one. The Jacksonville Jaguars, listen, I like Devin Lloyd as a pick. I know that he didn't have a great rookie year, showed flashes early on, and then kind of didn't develop past that. But I still think that that's a pick that could work out. We just have to give it more time. I like the Chad Muma selection as well. Didn't really get the Luke Fortner pick as on top of it, so that's kind of why I put it on the list. But it's really the Trayvon Walker thing, so do I feel better or worse about their draft after year one? I feel actually worse about a draft that I put on the worst list because Devin Lloyd didn't have a great rookie year. And part of why I was hesitant to put it on the list a little bit was because I like what Devin Lloyd, was going to do coming out of college. It just didn't really work out. So again, for Trayvon Walker, there's hope for him. He was a project when he got drafted. So saying that he's a bust after 1 year would be insane. He's not a bust. This is what we knew was going to happen, was it was going to take him some time. But as a whole, I would have liked to see Devin Lloyd do a little bit better. And so because of that, wasn't crazy about this draft at the time. Still am not crazy about it. But of course, still 1 year in, totally could turn around, and I wouldn't be shocked if, I think I'd be more surprised if neither Walker or Lloyd got better than if they, than if just one of them did. Did that make sense? I'm expecting at least one of them to get better is what I'm trying to say. Next up is the Minnesota Vikings. The Minnesota Vikings here on this list, who got a ton of players, and what's interesting about them is I put them on this list, so they made a ton of trade downs, and a lot of people hated the trade downs, felt like they didn't get enough value for these trade downs. I actually kind of defended that a little bit more. And, their GM, very analytically inclined. The analytics say trading down is pretty much always a good idea. You get more players is better than less players. Like, there's a lot of value in that. So, trading down, not a bad idea. What did not work out is just a lot of these selections, which I like the Andrew Booth pick, but a lot of these guys I felt like were just reaches at the time, and I still kind of feel that way. I mean, you look at the, where they were drafted compared to the, consensus big board, a lot of players that were drafted well in front of where they were on the consensus big board, which is just, it's a lot of reaches, which is not smart. That's not what the analytics say, is to reach and get players who, in the 50s and 60s who are on the consensus big board in the 90s. Now, again, we'll see what kind of their Scene and Booth can do year two. Definitely too early to call it either one way or the other on those players. But as a whole, I still kind of feel the same, which is like that you got a lot of players, want to see what they can do though. I put the Cardinals on this list as well, which is interesting because they had some picks I actually really liked. The Cameron Thomas and Majai Sanders selections I was a big fan of, and Trey McBride I was a big fan of, even though, we're waiting to see on all three of those players if they will turn up and be well. I didn't love the Hollywood Brown trade at the time, and he did some nice things for the Cardinals, but as a whole, that was why I put them on the loss category, and he didn't show me enough to make me feel better about that necessarily giving up a first-round pick for Marquise Brown, which could have maybe found a way to keep that and not get Marquise Brown, get a better receiver. But I felt like that was like a keeping Kyler Murray happy type thing more than anything potentially. So I don't know, kind of a weird selection there, but not a great one in my opinion. So I would still consider it a loss 1 year removed. Next up, the Cincinnati Bengals, which I didn't hate this, but I wasn't crazy on Daxton Hill, who I didn't think had a, we need to see more from him, basically, before I can give a real assessment of that. It's a to be determined. Cam Taylor-Britt was a bit of a reach at the time, not a massive one, but a bit of one. However, showed some flashes. I mean, that Buffalo game, he was legitimately great in the playoff game. So I guess maybe he just needs to play when it's snowing. That's where he's at his best. But again, another one of these drafts where it's like, okay, I put it as one of the worst drafts. It's not terrible. Again, you're going to get value when you draft. That's just kind of the thing. Every team adds value for the most part, with maybe one or two exceptions. Every team gets better, but at the same time, could they have gotten more better? I know that's not how you're supposed to say that, but anyways, could they have gotten more better? I don't know, but I don't feel that much differently about their draft 1 year removed. The Washington Commanders made this list, and I kind of see why, although I don't hate their draft either, and I think that was kind of my feeling when it happened as well, was like, okay, Jahan Dotson, they drafted him 16th. He was 31st on the consensus big board. He's been a good player for them. I mean, again, he was a consensus first-round pick, and he's looked like that. Has he been worth a top half of the first-round pick? I'll let you be the judge, but, they're happy with him. He's done what they expected him to do, so that's fine. And the Brian Robinson selection, I liked at the time. I was a big Brian Robinson fan. He made my top 5 running backs list, so I didn't hate that selection whatsoever. The Sam Howell pick, I really liked. I don't know why I didn't play him more. If you draft him and your quarterback situation isn't great, why not see what he can do? Now they maybe are going to next year. That doesn't make a ton of sense to me. The Fander and Mathis pick, I didn't love how it was a reach at the time. Same thing with like Percy Butler. So I don't know. Again, I put him on the loss category. I put him as a loser right after the draft, but I think they're happy with what they got, so maybe that's unfair. Finally, last but not least, the New England Patriots, which it looks a little different. For some reason, on my video, I forgot to include a chart when I talked about the Patriots, so that's why I'm using their Wikipedia page instead of my own chart. But it's really the top 2 picks I just did not get, the Cole Strange and Tyquan Thornton selections, which I still kind of stand by. I don't really get those. Not to say that those guys have been abysmal. They've been contributors, but you want more than just contributors with 2 top 50 selections. You do. You want at least a starter out of that. And they were 2 reaches. I mean, both of these guys were projected to go at least a round later than when they were selected, which was, it's not ideal. You don't want to do that. It doesn't typically work out when you do that. But then they ended up with some really good selections. I mean, Marcus Jones and Jack Jones have been great selections for them. The Bailey Zappi pick has looked like a great selection for them. So this is a win right now. And I liked a lot of those selections later on. I liked the Bailey Zappi pick when it happened and all that stuff. I just didn't love rounds 1 and 2, but in kind of classic Bill Belichick fashion, screws up the early picks, but makes up for it with the late picks, which is kind of what he does. So, those are my, that's my reaction to my worst drafts of 2022 list. I would say there's 2 that I would say in hindsight I was wrong about putting on the list. The Cowboys and the Patriots, those have proven me wrong. I would say that you could argue some of the other ones. Is that fair or is it unfair? Again, you got to put 7 on the list. If you take 1 off, you got to put someone else on. It's kind of the issue. But, as a whole, I get why I put all those teams on there. But at least a couple proved me wrong. But yeah, that's my thought. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.